Imagine you're a Formula One team engineer, watching all the data streaming in from the car as it races around the track at over 300 kilometers an hour. Everything seems fine until you notice something.
I'm sat there and these temperatures are creeping up, and they're really creeping up. So these temperatures are way too high, guys. We've got to turn this down. They started gradually turning down. We just didn't ever get control of those temperatures.
Mercedes drivers Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg are comfortably leading the race when everything starts to fall apart.
And that was when, I wouldn't say the wheels coming off, but we'd certainly had a very solid awakening that perhaps we really shouldn't be quite as confident as we were being at that point.
Nico backs off, but Lewis decides to keep pushing and unfortunately pays the price.
So his car failed completely and he burned out his rear brakes, and that was the end of that. But it wasn't the bits we thought that would get hot. We tested all those, they were fine. It was the bits that we didn't think were going to get hot, and because we didn't think they were going to get hot, we didn't have a way of cooling them.
These are the kinds of situations you're faced with when you're pushing the boundaries of what's possible at the pinnacle of motorsport.
Nature's got a way of finding out what you didn't take into account and holding you up to account and going, yeah, see that bit? You didn't think about that, did you, sunshine?
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of No Ordinary Monday. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your host, Chris Barron, and each week I sit down with a guest whose job is far from ordinary. We're going to explore how they got there, what it's really like behind the scenes, and then I'm going to ask them to relive the single most unforgettable experience of their career. Now, before we dive in, just a very quick announcement. I just wanted to say a big hello to any new listeners to the show. We've only just launched about 3 months ago, and I am so delighted at the growth of the show so far and all of the fantastic feedback we've had. I'm working super hard to improve the show week on week for you guys, so hopefully you stick around for the long term with us as we have big plans for everything from guests to just the format of the show in general. Okay, so on to this week's guest. You guys are in for a real treat this week. My guest, Ruaraidh McDonald-Walker, has spent his entire life obsessed with figuring out how things work, starting from taking apart toys as a little kid in Scotland to helping to design the most dominant Formula One engine of the modern era, leading Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton to break all kinds of records. But as you heard in that intro, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Ruaraidh relives the infamous 2014 Canadian Grand Prix. It was a season when Mercedes were suddenly looking unbeatable. But in Montreal, something happened inside the engines that nobody predicted. Temperatures started to rise and things spiraled, and Ruaraidh was in the hot seat trying to avert disaster. A catastrophic double-engine failure was on his hands. What unfolded over the next few laps changed the way that Mercedes engineered their cars and changed how Ruaraidh sees pressure, leadership, and the importance of making the hard calls when everyone is looking to you for the answer. It is a brilliant story, and it reveals a side of F1 that goes beyond all of those documentaries we've been watching lately. You're listening to No Ordinary Monday. Let's get into the show. Before I make any faux pas, people call it Ruaraidh. What do you prefer?
Ruaraidh is why it's the normal way. It's like the old Gaelic pronunciation, but Ruaraidh.
Anyone reading this episode will be like, how on earth do you say that?
But if you go on any American chat show at night chat show and stuff, they get an Irish guest on and they go, how do you pronounce this? That's Kiva, obviously. What do you think?
Yeah.
It's
Siobhan. Siobhan is always the good one, yeah.
What's that age for? Well, it's just Gaelic. It's just there at confusion.
It's just there for fun.
I've had that one. Yeah. Ruaraidh. How you doing? Oh, you what?
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Alrighty, cool. Let's get cracking. Ruaraidh, welcome to the podcast. How you doing today, man?
Good morning. I'm very good indeed. Yeah,
fantastic.
Glad to be here.
Where in the world are you?
So I am literally just north of Northampton, so about half an hour north of Silverstone, which is a home of Grand Prix racing in the UK. So right in the middle of the country.
Yeah,
long way from Scotland.
The world. A long way. We'll get into that. Don't worry. And for anyone watching this on YouTube, I cannot help but notice the incredible backdrop we've got with pinball machines and cars and all sorts of tinkery loveliness.
Engineers' hobbies. Yeah, engineers' hobbies. It's like electronics, 3D jigsaws, basically, that do
Oh
things.
wow.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
Lego
yeah.
is to me. It's something I've
Yeah,
done for years. It's very relaxing. Good way to turn
yeah,
your
it
brain
is.
off. Just sit there.
Amazing. And I guess this is it's when you're not tinkering in the lab or the workshop, you're at home tinkering with pinball machines and
Pinball
motorbikes and
machines,
all sorts.
motorbikes, and old cars down in the garage, and Lego and pinball machines, electronics generally. So I'm a mechanical and electronics engineer. So I'm a weirdo. I'm a mixture between both mechanical. I did a joint honours degree at Edinburgh. The only place that did
Yeah.
it actually at the time
Yeah.
was a
Yeah.
mechanical and electrical engineering degree, just to really screw up the drinking time.
Yep.
Did a double a joint honours in mechanical and electrical engineering. Super greedy. And
Yeah.
yeah, so I enjoy both. But normally with engineering, you get mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and and electronics, and the two don't really mix so much. So that's changing these days
Yeah.
because of the rise of software and electric vehicles and all that kind of stuff. People are having to go and do things they hadn't normally done. So for me, that was great because I've been doing that all the time. So I thought,
Yeah.
wow.
Amazing. Cool. I mean, I guess first things first is I want to start big and broad. You've got lots of incredible titles. You work for amazing companies, F1, other motorsports companies, and big names, McLaren, Mercedes. But I guess beyond the titles and the teams and the big names, how would you sort of describe to people not familiar with this world what it is you do for a living?
Oh gosh. So for me, what I do right now, I mean, what I've always done is develop solutions to problems. What engineers do. You
Yeah.
design and create things that solve a problem that people have, whether it's a toaster or a faster car.
Mhm.
And that's what engineers do. We go off and we create stuff, and we take ideas and we turn them into something that can be made and will help and improve people's lives or entertain people in the case of motorsport and racing. And that's what engineers do, and that's what I've always done. I've always been fascinated by how things work, and one of those kids that likes taking things apart and normal. Everyone's seen kids that have taken that. Oh, you've broken it now. You got the skillet putting it back together again, and and that's what I've always done. And so whether it's Formula One or racing more generally, engineering is creating solutions to problems. And if that problem is how do you make something go around a track faster, then that's how you apply it. So analyzing information, coming up with ideas, and latterly as a technical director, working with resources, whether that's people, whether it's budgets, the amount of time you've got, because motorsport, absolutely, when the flag drops, as the old saying goes, the it
Hmm.
stops. You've got a very time-bounded project. So hard endings, resources and ideas and delivery of those ideas, working and organizing through complex businesses, the ideas and output of very clever people. F1 in particular is full. It's like a university of the world. You've got people from all around the world: Brazilians, Italians, Chinese, Australians, Americans, all in one office together. Everyone driven, everyone very, very clever. And for me, organizing and pushing that forward and delivering eventually something which hopefully is successful, that's the key part of what I do and what I've always done. But it's all ultimately about that little kid inside you taking something apart. How does that work? How do we make it better?
It doesn't
Or
matter
it's
if
not
it's a
working. How do I make it work again? Or it did work
yeah.
before it took it apart.
Doesn't matter whether it's just a tiny Lego car or a
Exactly.
$100 million piece of machinery. The
Yeah,
same
I mean,
principle applies, right?
always. And for me, one of the things, and which is why I wanted to do, the podcast and else, one of the things for me about engineering and particularly about science and STEM education generally, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, is for young people to see beyond, "Oh, I don't like doing that in school. It's not very exciting doing sums." But this is what it leads to, and this is what
Mm.
you can go and do with that. And this is really making that junction between our education system, which pretty much is goal driven. You've got to pass this test. You've got to get this exam. Where can you go with that, and how do you get there? And that's what you're talking about as well. And that's really why I wanted to come on and discuss for you, because that for me
Yeah.
is the future of where the business is, future of where kids go, and how they get to what they want to do and their goals. So for me, yeah, it is just that simple. It's just a matter of whether it's $100 million machine or a piece of technical Lego. It's all fundamentally the same problem, and analyzing, understanding, creating synthesizing a new idea, manufacturing it, and delivering it.
I want to take it back a couple of seconds. So, you said you had that passion for applying the maths. Figure out why you've got the maths on a page and you could apply it to a real world problem, and so you built a career in left doing mech eng or engineering and mechanical engineering at university, and then you joined motorsports building engines, right? What was that? Where did that come from?
I think from a various I mean, you can probably ask my parents. My father was a French and German professor at Stirling University, and my mum was a librarian and artist, also at Stirling. And so, here's me, this weird kid who's bumping around, trying to understand how everything works and taking everything apart and not really that interested in the thing. We're all musical, which is kind of maths anyway. But yeah, mom and dad were like, well, where's this kid come from? Who's an engineer. And my grandfather, I think on my mom's side, was a civil engineer, site architect, that kind of stuff. So I think there's possibly an aspect of that. But for me, it's something I've absolutely always wanted to do. I was always fascinated by trucks, by lorries, by cars from an incredibly early age. And I think I've got this postcard here, but that was one of my earliest Ladybird books. Mum bought me that. And I've got, that's a postcard, but I've got the original book downstairs somewhere, held together by sticky tape. And literally, I've got little sketches of it, and I've drawn little curly things coming out of exhaust pipes. I was probably about 3, I have no idea. But that's one of my earliest memories. But it also reminds me that, which is why it stays up there above my desk, that, that's from little dreams. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to play with things that went broom from a very early age. And that's always that's never changed. And now they go whizzz, but they still move and they still churn on their own power. They're a lot more electric now than they were. But it was that fascination with vehicles, cars, lorries, and to a lesser extent planes as well through my dad, because he flew in the war. And so, it was always something I wanted to do. So when I left school and went to uni, then I was casting around kind of halfway through uni and thinking, wow, you're trying to get jobs, and very much more competitive these days. But in those days, I just wrote a few letters to people saying, I'm really interested in doing a summer job or a job when I graduate. And I'd always wanted to work in F1. So I think I found, when I was going through the library, remember those, and there was an FT, copy of the FT, which had a
Financial
British
Times,
industry special, was all about motorsport. And I just went through that article and went down all the companies. I knew I wanted to work in a couple. And in the late 80s, early 90s, when I was at university, Ford very famously had launched the Sierra Cosworth and the Escort Cosworth. They were absolutely in the press. We had Cosworth cars in Formula One. I watched Formula One since I was very, very young. My dad, despite being a linguist, was definitely a racing fan, and we sat and watched. It was a thing Dad I did. We sat on a Sunday afternoon and watched a Grand Prix. But at that time, Cosworth were the power supplier. That was the most successful F1 engines that anyone had ever seen. So when their name was on the page, I thought, oh, okay, and that's in Northampton. Okay, so wrote them a letter, and then went backwards and forwards a few times from Edinburgh to Northampton, which is a fair trek, to do interviews. And very luckily, my parents, both being in education anyway, had made sure that I was well supplied with engineering dads. My mum and dad recognized they were not engineers, couldn't answer the questions that this freak show of a child kept coming up with. Where does this come from? And, one of my friends' dads, he worked in a foundry in Falkirk. He ran the foundry in Falkirk. So he taught me everything there was to know about turning liquid metal into useful parts. So I was very well supplied with engineering dads and people around me that I was attracted to, and in terms of learning from, and supplied me with all the information that this little thirsty mind needed to do crazy.
So you were supercharged to go to Cosworth and all those guys, and you were primed.
Sponge. Sponge. And so when I went to this interview at Cosworth in Northampton, I went through the first interview with the personnel manager, and that was fine. We mostly talked about rugby because he was a big rugby fan, and my dad had been a rugby ref, and I'd been to the internationals in Edinburgh and had rugby at Dollar, obviously. And then the second interview was the full board. And that was about a month later. I made it to the second interview, full board of Cosworth, which at the time was a full service company from road cars, F1 cars, all the machining, all the assembly, even the castings. They had their own foundry over in Worcester. So everything. Casting is important. That's Mr. Brown, that was the Falkirk foundry manager. So I got questions from all parts of the company, most of which I was able to answer. And then I got a question from the foundry manager. Now, castings is not something most people learn, and I'd be dead lucky because of Mr. Brown. And I was able to answer his question immediately, confidently, and fairly certain in the knowledge that I was not BSing in any way. I was absolutely happy that this was the right answer. And his eyebrows went up about half an inch, as did, and a few other people looked at him like, so I'm obviously thinking this was a good thing, because obviously no one else would be able to answer this question or even approach getting it right. So I think that was probably a turning point. So thank you, Mr. Brown. And that got me into Cosworth, which just goes that all those influences, all those people around you that you can pick up information from and learn from. That I'm pretty sure that got me the job, and that got me into Cosworth, and then I spent 10 years learning all about engines.
So you've got this good base of Cosworth building, working with engines, engineering the I guess you call them the drivetrains in that world, but essentially the engines, powertrains, and then you went to like other teams, Mercedes and McLaren, and you've got building engines with them as well.
So I had an epiphany about halfway through my career. I think things are changing in the world. I've started off being an expert and building myself into an expert in turbocharged internal combustion engines, generally with the torque management, so the way that the engines are managed. And what was in later the 90s, earlier became direct injection, fuel injection, that kind of stuff. So all of that stuff, lots of electronics, lots of software, all of that stuff is kicking off. And I changed to a small company. A load of people left Cosworth Engineering after it was taken over. A small company called Integral Powertrain, based in Milton Keynes, now called Helix. And was there for 7 years. And during that time, they kind of did that transition that a lot of people are now seeing. They were really early, miles ahead of the curve. And we transitioned from doing internal combustion engine work. I think I ran the first electric motor there in 2005, doing a project called Supergen. And that was the first time that I'd used the electrical, well, not the electronic, but the doing pure electrical stuff rather than combustion stuff. So that was 2005. And, Prius had been launched by Toyota in sort of the late 90s, early noughts. That hybridization thing was starting to come. It hadn't really hit the main manufacturers yet, but you could see that was the way things were going. I need to go back to my joint mechanical and electrical degree and pull the electrical bit up to speed and spend some time doing that. So I think from 2005 onwards, so I spent the first 15 years of my career doing combustion, and I spent the last 20 doing electrical or hybrid.
Wow.
So Integral Powertrain were miles ahead of the curve, and they were doing, as I say, small hybridized devices to go on combustion engines. I spent a couple of years doing that, and it was at this point that Formula One had said it was going to go hybrid. I thought, because I'd been at Cosworth, I'd been Formula One, and I thought, get back into Formula One here. And so I applied to work for Mercedes Brixworth. So that's where their F1 engines are made. Mercedes in Brackley, which is the other side of Silverstone, that's where the cars are made. And the two come together, to engine and car, to make the successful Formula One racing team together. But so I applied over to Brixworth behind me there, and basically they was just starting the project where they were making those first Formula One hybrids, and that was for the 2009 Formula One season. So I joined there at the end of 2007, beginning of 2008, a year to get all that stuff sorted out. And that really was a fascinating time, because I think if everyone looks at, if you're a car person, you kind of know what a road car engine looks like, and it's got a bit of iron on it, and it's all fairly heavy and manufactured. But if you look at Formula One engine, you're going to see this beautiful piece of filigree, and everything's machined all over, and it's all exquisite. And if you look at an electric motor, like an industrial thing, you've got something with some feet on it and a little connection block on the side and a fan on the end and some ribs down the side, and that's an electric motor. What does a racing electric motor look like? Nobody had any idea, because no one had done that before. And so that was a key learning experience. Nobody knew what a racing electric motor should look like. So when you take a bunch of Formula One engineers and apply some electrical constraints rather than combustion, right, lads, let's go mad and see what we can dream up and make a really fast, light, incredibly efficient electric motor. And a lot of learning, a lot of failures, and a lot of stuff going on to get to the point where, we had a relatively successful electric motor. We had a battery that would fit in an F1 car that was robust, that failed reasonably benignly when you crashed it, which of course you kind of expect to do in an F1 car.
Yeah.
And it was an incredibly creative time for, what does a high performance Formula One motor look like when it's electric? And so that was a wonderful time. 400-volt motor. It was 60 kilowatts, 80 horsepower, for about 7 seconds a lap. So not particularly ambitious, but nevertheless,
A little boost.
That was what F1 was doing, and we were pretty happy with that. And so I went because one of our chaps had a personal issue, a family issue. Then he couldn't go at the track, so I was at the track quite regularly, and again a wonderful learning, because then you learn how to deliver stuff. Because the work at track is very different from the kind of work back at base where you're developing stuff for the future, for the following year. Work at track is we've got to make this work tomorrow, or tonight, or by the next.
In a few hours, qualify. Yeah, someone's crashed a car in qualifying, or and they've got to, or in a practice, and they've got to be ready.
Or something goes wrong, and how do you've got someone sweating over your shoulder? Oh, no, get the car on the track.
Well, I wanted to ask. I mean, so many people listening. As you probably know, F1 has exploded in the last since Drive to Survive Netflix series. It's gone gangbusters compared to I've been a fan. You've been a fan for much longer than I have. But anyway, so many people listening might now be Formula One fans, and they've seen the races, they've seen the documentary, or whatever. But give us your perspective of what being behind the scenes trackside on a race weekend with a team like Mercedes or whatever, what's it like?
So it's never as glamorous as everyone thinks it is. And if I look at a typical race weekend, and that doesn't change for anyone, everyone that does it thinks that, all your guys up and down the path, they're all enemies. No, you've got mates in all the different garages, because it's like politicians. Everyone thinks that everyone in Parliament is sort of somehow, they hate the people on the other side of Parliament. Well, you're not. They're a politician, you're a politician, and you all sit in the bar together afterwards and have a pint, because you've got the same life experience. And the same's true with the garages and in the paddock. Everyone's traveling. It's like, are you traveling next year? Yeah, I'll be traveling next year.
Yeah.
And it's that traveling lifestyle, and that's what everyone from mechanics to engineers to team principals, they're all part of that traveling family, and it is definitely a family. So that part of it is wonderful. The part that everyone expects is hyper glamorous and stuff. There are awful long hours. There's a lot of travel, and it pretty much goes taxi, airport, crew bus, hotel, crew bus, track, crew bus, hotel, crew bus, track, repeat to fade, finish, race, hopefully won some pots, go back to hotel, pick up bags, crew bus back to airport back to home, taxi back to base. That's a race weekend.
Jeez.
And if you're stuck in your own job, bubble, whatever you're concentrating on, so for me, that was generally sat in the back of the garage or in the truck at the back with, a laptop, looking at data. And on the radio, you got the radios in front of you, the buttons of the radios in front of you. You see those guys out in the pit wall with all the screens and all the radio buttons. Everyone in the garage has that. You just don't see them. You only see the guys on the front, or as it's colloquially known, the Pratt perch.
I mean, for our American viewers,
the important people sit. Engineers all get to sit in the back, and you occasionally see some of the ones in the garage. You don't see all the guys at the back. You see all the mechanics. They come out and do the pit stops and all the rest of it. And you'll see them putting the car together and sweating on the top line when they go out to the grid. But there's a whole bunch of people at the back and sitting there on the laptop and running away.
I mean, speaking about those, as I said, pushing the limits and finding the stress points and coming across problems, because you are pushing the limits of technology.
Always.
On this show, we always like guests to come on and share the most standout sort of, or one of the most standout experiences of their career. And I know you have a particular fascinating story to tell that kind of covers that same spot. But I'd love if you could preface this. Just give because I know it's an F1 story. It's when you're at Mercedes, but just sort of preface this story for where Mercedes were at this particular season before this race happened.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so for me, this is 2014, and
Yeah.
it was an incredible time. We'd spent the year before, 2 years before, working incredibly hard on this system, on the engine, the powertrain itself. And I think, unlike many of the other teams, the wonderful thing about Mercedes, even though it was in two separate factories, they worked very, very cleverly to make the car and the engine one and the same. And that everyone had to compromise. Everyone had to feel a bit of pain in how it was all put together. Nothing was easy for anyone. In the way that the vehicle was constructed to accept parts of the engine, the way the engine was constructed to make it easier for the vehicle, all these kind of things were done. I'm thinking particularly of the turbocharger, which was like 4 feet long. And then, why have you done that? Well, because the air's at one end, the exhaust's at the other, right? So it just made all the plumbing easier. And that was a very difficult problem to solve. It was a bunch of incredibly clever guys at Mercedes that went into Cranfield and they looked at helicopter gas turbines and did amazing work. And in the middle of it is this little motor that we looked at, and we had to make it all work. And we had a system, a fault system, an open issues system, which we looked through, and then on that preceding sort of 6 months before that season started, there was a sort of top 10. What's the biggest job stoppers? And everyone was concentrating on that. And we had a system where there were no meetings in the afternoon, no meetings. Everyone works, and everyone works till the job's finished in the evening, and the food will be provided. Don't worry, and that kind of thing. And it was proper blitz spirit, real blitz spirit. And I think in one day I worked 26 hour day. On a Friday, I didn't finish until, the next day. I literally worked round the clock and then some, and then I went home and slept for a day and a bit, and that was the weekend. But those kind of times are pretty intense.
Yeah. Because
winter testing is one of those things. That cadence of the F1 calendar, you'll see that you're all excited in March because the first race is coming up. Well, we've all been doing this stuff since before Christmas. We've just gone through, where are we now? What, week 41 or something? 42. Week 38 is the traditional dead point. That's when the engine for next year has to run. On the factory side. And the trackside guys they're chomping at the bit, and they've been at home now for all December and January. They want to get out and do some stuff. We get down to Ruaraidh or wherever it is to do winter test. And that's it. This is the first time. No one knows. Especially with a big change like 2014, no one knows where everyone else is going to be. And, are they hiding the light under a laurel or whatever? And some people are having real big issues, and and some of the other teams were struggling, and, we're not fast. And we seem to be doing quite well. I'm like, okay, that's scary. Cross your fingers, don't say anything, lads, don't jinx it. And,
touch wood, yeah.
And then, we had the first race of the season, we had a failure on the way to the lap, on the first lap to grid. Oh, no. It's gone wrong. But the other car was really successful. And then the next race, which is incredibly successful, and I was like, crikey, what's going on here? We're not winning all these races. And it was very clear very early on that we had the class of the field, and that, this was, people had already went to test. People had already gone. The bookies here in Northampton are really well sussed. As soon as winter test happens and people start appearing in Mercedes uniforms and putting bets on, the alarm goes out to everybody in the whole country. All the bookies, all the odds start shortening, and you get your money on quick. And of course, I don't do that kind of thing, but people do.
Of course, people do.
And so it was clear that we were in a really good situation. And for me personally, we had people like Niki Lauda around the team, and you'd see him in the office. And for me, that was a proper starstruck moment. It's Niki Lauda. It's actually Niki Lauda with his little red hat on, and a guy that I'd watched since the 70s. Since James Hunt, Niki Lauda, when I watched it with my dad. I was age 7, and so it's actually Niki Lauda. And I'm sitting there with friends who've been in the business their entire life.
And they were starstruck.
Pinching yourself. So this is the experience we've had. Winter tests. We've had the first few races. I was in the factory for the first few races. So that generally at the start of the season, this is like Australia or something like that, and so the factory will work on Australia time. I was in the office. I've got big screens all around me. I've got all the data, and I've got the radio buttons. The same as you do at the track. You've got that in the factory in Northamptonshire. I'm sat there, I'm on Australian time, I've been on Australian time for 3 days, even though I'm in Northamptonshire, which makes life entertaining. And we're winning a lot. And I've got a picture of me from, I think, race 4 with all the trophies on, like this. It was on my LinkedIn for a while, but it was a bit embarrassing.
Yeah.
But it was an incredible time. And then we got to Canada. And that was when, I wouldn't say the wheels coming off, but we certainly had a very solid awakening that perhaps we really shouldn't be quite as confident as we were being at that point. That there were still things that we didn't know about this wonderful system that we created. And well, literally, I'm sat there in the office with the data streaming. This is Canada time, so I'm sat there and these temperatures are creeping up, and they're really creeping up. And we're miles in the distance. We're like, slow down, lads. We don't need to be this fast. We're miles in the distance. You know, Lewis and Nico are both romping off in the distance. So these temperatures are way too high, guys. We've got to turn this down. They started gradually turning down. We just didn't ever get control of those temperatures. And I was too late spotting that. And
just for audiences, you guys have the ability remotely to control the car as the team.
No, caveat. So no, absolutely. So that's very 80s. We certainly could send stuff to the car. Now, very much not the case. All the things that you'll hear commands in the radio like, send X26, and the driver will be told to press a series of buttons, and that will execute the command. So it's very much what
driver executed,
like to call wetware, i.e. people. And you have to identify the problem and then send the fix to the driver who has to implement it. But yeah, so here we are at Canada, and these temperatures are creeping up, and the thing about Canada, it's a very short lap, and it's got a lot of chicanes in it. And it comes around quick because it's a short lap, and we just didn't have the cooling. But it wasn't the bits we thought that would get hot. We tested all those; they were fine. It was the bits that we didn't think were going to get hot, and they were getting hot. And because we didn't think they were going to get hot, we didn't have a way of cooling them. And that's when it all became a problem, because they just kept going up, and we're turning things down and turning things down. The guys at track are saying, turning it down, keep turning it down. And we never really got control of the temperatures of the electronics on the board that controls the motors. And once they got to sort of like 127, the maximum in the red line in the system was that the guys at the track were working to was at 110, and we were all sort of, and they were turning it down, and it wasn't working. And we got to 120. This can't go on like this. This can't, and then it didn't. And at that point, I was like, okay, the MGUKs, within about a lap of each other, the MGUK, so that's the one that's doing the regeneration of the vehicle, so that's braking assistance on the rear axle, all that kind of thing. They both went. They just died. And so the team had been warned this was going to happen at some point, because we'd failed to get control of it. And as a result, both cars had MGUK failure. And the motors were fine, all the drive stuff was fine, but some tiny little piece of electronics we were subsequently able to find had died. It was like 0.0005 cent part. You buy them on a reel of 1,000.
Oh my God.
It got too hot. It got 127 degrees, which frankly is pretty good, because, normally for electronics, 110 is fine. So, did all right. We shouldn't have let it get that hot, was the lesson. And that was the key thing. In terms of that race, the drivers basically had to move all their brake bias back. They'd lost all their rear braking, because a lot of the rear braking is done by the MGUK, and so the rear brakes aren't that big, and so basically had to change the way they drove. And Nico managed it, and Lewis he was head down and he was going for it, and so his car failed completely, and he burned out his rear brakes, and that was the end of that.
I had to retire the car.
And Nico managed to get it to the finish line, and we got a reasonably salvaged finish. But for me, the real interesting part of that began when all the parts get in someone's luggage and flown straight home straight after the race. And that's when the real interesting part starts. That what we call a Cat 1 fault. So that was when we had a major job stopper, i.e. a race failure, which this was, double race failure, as even worse. Though discipline-wise, you treat them as separate failures until you know they're not. So 2 investigations ongoing, and then we went through the whole thing to understand what was going on, how we'd missed it, what had caused it, what we could do about it within the limits of the hardware we had in front of us. We had to plead to the FIA for an opportunity to put some reliability fixes in, please, but also change the way that we run it and look at how we help the guys at the track run the car. So give them better tools that will, because it was a very slow rise, which makes it very hard to predict. So we had to develop tools that would then say, well, actually, if you carry on like this with this very slow rise, by the end of the race, you're going to be in the red line. So you need to kind of turn it down now. It's the rocket adjustment. It costs you very little fuel to adjust the trajectory early, but if you do it at the end, you get no chance.
It's tough.
So it's that kind of thing. And that was what we developed. So we had to develop that. And that meant working with the reliability team, the electronics team, the dyno team, pulling everybody together to come up with solutions that would allow us to fix this problem in a timely manner and get the car, because the next race was coming up pretty quickly. And then we had Austria, which again, high, hot, very short lap, very aggressive lap. And it was the same problem. So that
I guess just to explain that for people that on the longer straights, you got time to cool brakes and all that kind of stuff. But when you got short laps, you don't have the long straights that help you get the air to cool the brakes. You're just on brakes all the time.
Monaco, and then Austria and Canada and the classics, and they're difficult for other reasons and these other reasons. So for me, that was a really important time because it was about managing information, the flow of information around the whole company and pulling stuff together and bringing it together. B, coming up with solutions under extreme pressure and making sure that everyone was working in the right direction. C, making sure that people could think. There's one of the worst things to have in that situation is something I call decision stasis, or latterly developed that idea, is sometimes you're not sure what the right answer is. And actually, most people they've kind of freaked. They're not really sure what to do. And for me, especially as a technical leader and now latterly as technical director, that is literally my job, to make that call. And sometimes it might not be the right one, but you've got a direction going now. So we're not sure which way to go. Is it there or is there? Well, I'll go that way. Oh, it doesn't seem to be the right answer. Okay, well, when we reviewed that, it's showing we should probably go that way. Well, we didn't know that, but we actually, we're not. You've got to make some move to get some data. And sometimes that pressure is that classic, you drop the steak in the pan and it shrinks. And, well, they don't know what to do. And as a team leader, as a director, that sometimes you just have to absorb the pressure. You go, no, it's all right. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. And you guys get on with that bit. Let me worry about that bit and we'll get on and we'll get a direction. And sometimes you just have to make that decision. And you're not sure either. But you say, well, what I do know is if we don't do anything, we won't find the answer out. But if we go in that way, and then you keep an open mind. That's absolutely the most important thing in engineering. One of the things that I found in some other in other ways of working in other cultures is you kind of get that pin the tail on the donkey. It's that. Oh, I'm going to fix that. Well, actually, you don't know it's that. You've kind of made that assumption, but it is an assumption when you want to say about making an ass of you and me. That it's an important one to say, I don't know this answer. And that's probably another lesson. But I think one of the things that was wonderful at Mercedes, and that's taught me a lot, actually, and that's definitely something I took from Mercedes, is complete lack of blame culture. In that time period, it was amazing.
I've heard that.
There is no fear of being wrong. Because if you didn't break something, you clearly weren't trying hard enough.
Yeah. So,
and the whole point about F1 is you should be trusted. That lack of blame where people can go, I'm not sure about this. They're not, as soon as you say, that's your fault, that's it. All creativity goes out the window because no one will try. Because they'll go, it's your fault. And you made a mistake.
Don't want to be under
You've messed up. You've cost us this. And all of it, it's that. No, never. It's a team effort. And it has to be, if you want to succeed, people have to feel free to make crazy ideas. Let's make a 4-foot-long turbo. Because, why not? And I love that about that time period was that freedom of thought, freedom of solution, caused by the fact that people didn't have to worry about blame. And that's sadly a very rare thing, actually, in engineering generally, in industry generally.
And anywhere, yeah. I mean, that situation is extra. I mean, you're lucky to to come home with a result with Nico, but I mean, not lucky, but obviously, I mean, that whole sequence of events, so you could see the temperatures ticking up. I'm sure there was a dialogue between the drivers and their race engineers the entire time saying, we can see the temperatures going up, try this, try that. And they're probably
Yeah.
constantly trying different solutions in the car, each of them not working. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like in that sort of post-race team debriefing, like, are there, I mean, from Lewis and Nico, like, what are they saying? Are they kind of deflated? Are they emotional? Like,
Everyone's disappointed, and they just want to understand what's going wrong, because it's something I could have
right.
done. Could I have done something better? Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things we could all do better, and everyone has that introspective 360 look at, where can we go, what can we do, and at the factory side of things, certainly we spent a lot of time looking at that, coming up with tools for the guys at the track to help the drivers, and say,
Yeah.
this is what we need to manage, this is how we need to manage the temperatures, and if we don't do it, that's what it's going to look like in 50 laps time. And in the next race at Austria, we had a 1, 2, 3, 4. So, there's that.
So you fixed
we
it,
did
yeah.
something right.
Well, I was going to say, does an event or a situation like that? Because at that point, did you have a feeling of like, I guess maybe not invulnerability, but like you're like, huh, we're doing well. We don't know exactly why we're doing well, and then suddenly you get a reality check like this. Like, did it burst a bubble for everybody?
I think everyone's always reasonably stressed anyway, and they don't want to assume anything. I think it was possibly a little bit of, I don't think hubris creeps in quite that early in the season, but
Right.
I do think we were probably overconfident, and
Yeah.
we should have. I should have been massively more aggressive in telling the guys at the track in no uncertain terms to turn it down much more aggressively, much
Really?
earlier in the race. But that's hindsight, and it's always 2020.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So there was, with the benefit of hindsight, that's what you would have done. You would have gone, you would have seen
I'd
the
have said
temperatures
no.
going up and going, we have a potentially critical issue
I
here.
simply would have said, that's it. We don't need this performance. Turn it down to 50%. We're like changing it by 5% at the top. We come down from 110, 105 to 100 to 95. No, we should have just gone straight to 50. Let's get control of the temperatures. And once we got control of the temperatures, then you don't need it. We're
Then.
10, 15 seconds in the lead. You don't need this stuff.
But is that just down to, no one wants to sort of tell a racing driver to, okay, we're going to scale things back to 50%.
It's a team effort.
Just
It's never just the driver's decision. It's a team
okay.
effort. And I think
Everyone wants to win.
I should
and
have
wants to
made
win
that
big.
much clearer to everyone. But then I didn't realize it was going to carry on rising so slowly for so long. And then you're in that big rocket, that rocket trajectory thing where you're at the end here. And now to make that change that way, you've got to burn a hell of a lot of fuel. Or in our case,
Yeah.
turn it a long way down to try and get back into control of the situation. So lots of learning, and don't ever think that something won't happen, because it generally will find. And nature's got a way of finding out what you didn't take into account and holding you up to account and going, yeah, see that bit? You didn't think about that, did you, sunshine?
Yeah, didn't think about that. And someone who's at the cutting edge of battery technology, because we've seen so much development and innovation in batteries in recent years. I mean, do you see just an increased electrification across the board, replacing, especially vehicles and combustion engines and things like that?
Yeah, I think I love engines. They live and breathe. They're the living heart of the machine. I always have loved engines, and I always will love engines. But are they something we should be doing habitually as a society? No, probably not. Will I always have a classic motorbike? Absolutely. Will I have a classic car? Yes. Will it be my main car? Absolutely not. Will it only do a few hundred, maybe 1,000 miles a year? Definitely. Would I use it to drive across, would I drive to Germany to see my wife's family, drive to go skiing in electric cars? I've had electric cars for 7 odd years. And don't get me wrong, the last 3 cars I had before my electric car was V8s, 63 AMGs, monstrous, great big 500 plus horsepower V8s. But you've got to remember, and I say this as an engine guy, in most cases, if you put 100 quid's worth of fuel in your car, you might as well take 20 pounds out of your pocket and then burn 80. That's what you're doing. You're literally putting a match or a cigarette lighter underneath 80 pounds of your money, throwing it in the air. And
80% of that fuel you put in is a complete, it's just going to, the energy just gets wasted.
Anywhere where we burn stuff.
Yeah.
Anywhere where we burn stuff, that's the same. And some diesels are a bit better. That's why people like diesels, because they're more fuel economical. But in a car, still probably only 35, maybe 40% if you're lucky. in a big diesel going slowly like a container ship, 55%.
That's
So
incredible.
there's a
So only
couple of F1s.
half of basically in the best case scenario, half of the fuel you put in is just
Heat.
wasted. The energy's wasted.
And that's not because
Wow.
we're bad at this. This is
Yeah.
called the laws of physics, Captain. And, we can't do better than that. People say, oh, yeah, things will improve with time. And no, there is a
Yeah.
physical limit to how far we can go. And efficiencies and natural reality mean we can approach that, but we can never beat it.
Yeah.
And that is, these laws have been known, the laws of thermodynamics and these things have been known for the Carnot cycle. Also, it's all been known for a very long time, certainly since the 17th century. And we can do really well, but we never beat physics. And there is always a loss of energy. Whenever we do something, there's always a loss of energy. So it's about minimizing that loss of energy.
Just wrapping things up here. I always love to ask for anyone listening, because people click on all sorts of episodes, we've got all kind of careers off here. And if someone's an aspiring engineer, particularly if they want to get into Formula One or some kind of high performance motorsport, if they want to follow in your footsteps, essentially, what kind of words of advice have you got for them?
I think listen to your maths and physics masters at school. Probably better than I did. Because it's a really tough competitive world out there now. And we were talking earlier before we started about AI and things like that. So there's a huge amount of that kind of thing is going to affect the workplace, affect how people work. And that's going to be a key one. But the fundamental skills of how you think, analyze data, analyze information, and come up with new ideas, that does not change. And AI will only interpolate between things we already know. It will not take us beyond that. That's your job. And coming up with new ideas and changing the world is the requirement for the next generation. Go do it. Go take your dreams and make them happen. Don't think that AI is the solution to everything. Like we said at the beginning of this conversation, the guys that made Concorde in the 60s with slide rules and drawing boards, that's kind of where we are right now. I feel that's where I am right now compared with people that are growing up AI native. They're a step above where I am. I feel like a guy. But those guys with slide rules and drawing boards achieved amazing things, and they did that all through the power of their own brains. And I worry slightly if you rely on AI that you won't develop those. So for me, go think. Learn those skills. You will need them, even if the AI will make it shorter. Calculators and that kind of thing. They were a big thing when I was like, you can't use calculators in exam, and that suddenly that was a problem, and no one would think anymore once we had calculators. And I'm sure the same's true of the way I view AI. But definitely get out there, learn those skills, maths and physics. The other thing is go out and enjoy yourself. Go out and find an old motorbike or an old lawnmower or whatever it is that fascinates you, that you want to understand. Don't ever feel that you shouldn't go out and dig and understand things, and just go and find knowledge for the sake of it. Everything that's on your phone, we've got these marvel devices, and all we do is we shout at each other on the internet. But literally every piece of information that is in the world is out there. You can use Wikipedia, you can use whatever you like, and just go and learn about stuff. Be careful of your sources. Be judgmental of your sources. Understand good quality sources of information and junk information, whether it's AI slop or it's someone with an axe to grind. Understand where that stuff's coming from. But the fundamentals don't change. The laws of physics, maths, all the rest of it. That stuff is, we still learn new stuff every day, but the fundamentals of that don't change. Go and learn those first. Go and enjoy yourself. As I said, take things apart. Go and race karts. Go and rock up at a local, motorsport garage, or if you've not got one, go to your local racetrack. Find someone whose shop you can sweep up if you're young and you want to help and you're 16 or something like that. Go and just get yourself exposed to it. Learn. Marshalling, that's another one that's often, if you go to your local race circuit, volunteer to be a marshal when you can, get involved that way. These things are really key, and they're really formative in looking at. And F1 in particular, and motorsport more generally, is such an incredibly competitive space. I remember when I was looking at grad schemes now as a senior, looking at who we should hire into grads, you pretty much had to have a first in engineering from a recognized engineering university. You had to have done Formula Student. You had to have done extracurricular activities related to, or at least showing some interest in motorsport. For me, music was always a good one because music's highly mathematical anyway. So an understanding of music, or going off and doing stuff that requires effort. You've got to get that you've gone off and done something at a level which requires that 10,000 hour commitment that everyone talks about, that 4 years of blooming hard work to get to grade 8 on the piano or whatever it is you've done. That demonstrates serious commitment to learning and improving yourself. And that for me is something when I'm looking at a CV, if I just completed these projects at uni and I did these exams, wonderful. Tell me about you. And that development of you as a person, that will help you in spades. And it will make you have more fun and you meet other people. Engineers obviously struggle sometimes to get, and for me that's a good thing about going and doing music. But get out, whether it's being a marshal, going out working for companies as an apprentice, get out and experience motorsport and prove to the people that you're asking to be hired by that you live and breathe it and you love it and you understand it and it's part of who you are, because that's actually fundamentally what F1's like. It can be all consuming. And I got a lot of lines to prove it, but it's still a lot of fun, and I still regard it as something which makes me want to get out of bed every morning and enjoy work on that Monday morning. The title of the podcast, it's not a normal Monday morning when you get out. I'm really excited to get to work today because most people don't do that, and I'm really lucky to be able to say that I do that, and I want everyone else to share that enjoyment and be able to work in motorsport. Learn new things, create new ideas, potentially change the world, and improve a lot for everybody else, that we can make more efficient cars or medical sensors for your needs, or be able to have seamless wireless on the train, or whatever it is that you do that comes from that F1 experience. But you'll have a damn good time doing it. And it's not just something on the telly, it's something that you can do too. And that's a key one for me.
Well, funnily enough, you mentioned music and the connection with engineering and maths and stuff. And you and I went to the same school, Dollar Academy, way back in the day. And I know you were a piper in the bike band.
I was drummer at the time. I'm a piper now, but I was a drummer at the time.
You're a piper now, but you're a drummer at the time. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. It might be a controversial question, but in your experience, do you think musicians make better engineers?
I don't know, actually. I think creativity comes in many places. And musical creativity is one thing. I think the discipline of understanding and learning music and learning any skill, I think it's, whether that's art or artistry, engineering is fundamentally a creative endeavor. Whether you're drawing something or whether you're just dreaming up an idea or writing code or whatever, it's a creative experience. One's an artist. And I remember standing at a party once when I was at university. So how are you, artist or an engineer? How do you say? Well, I draw a cylinder head, Mum draws landscapes. So what's the difference?
Fair enough.
And fundamentally, both are creative experiences. One is designed and limited by the laws of physics and combustion and mechanical engineering, and the other one is art and appreciation in the eye of the beholder. But you could equally have the same argument of saying, well, is Picasso and watercolors the same thing? You get into old discussions about art history. And
it becomes philosophical.
But it's all creativity. And I think for me, music is generally a mathematical brain, especially in time and complex time signatures and that kind of stuff. If you can do, music in complex time, then you've probably got a pretty mathematical brain anyway. You might not know it. You might hate maths, but actually you might secretly be good at it if you put your mind to it. You found something that you wanted to do with it rather than just... and that's the same. The same is true of bell ringing and other things that you do. So, but for me, I've always had musical instruments around me, so I find it very relaxing. Apart from anything else, so and I've got it's a bagpipe chanter right there. So
there you go,
right on my desk, and if I'm sat there between meetings, I'll have a quick tootle and play something and practice something, or do some scales or whatever. Practice some GDEs or whatever. Do something related. But it's it's a good brain switch off. Some people enjoy gardening leave, and play music. Do something because it's a high pressure environment. So having something which you can do, Lego, to relax your mind, turn it off, and just enjoy your spare time. Because if you're going to do the best you can in the F1 world, the other thing you have to be able to do is switch off and relax. Because otherwise, you won't be any good when you get back in on Monday morning.
Yeah, it's true. Would you play the chanter for us? You got a little
chanter? Oh God!
Yeah. Come on,
you put me on the spot there. Now.
I know.
We're gonna try. Will that actually work?
Let's see.
There you go.
Fantastic.
Scotland the Brave.
Wow, that was brilliant. Scotland Brave. In fact, just for any non-Scottish listeners listening to that, a chanter it's kind of like a practice bagpipe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of a bagpipe without the bag, so it doesn't
Yeah,
have the same
essentially, you're
sound,
just
but it's the same principle.
blowing into it, and you've just got your reed there,
Yeah.
and then all the holes that are there. But
Yeah,
it's just you'd normally have the bag there, and you play it down there with a bag in between, and also
Brilliant.
much louder. You can play that inside. You can play bagpipes inside.
If you had a pipe, a bagpipe, I probably wouldn't have you blow people's ears off, but that was brilliant.
Very, very loud.
I
think I'm very, very protective of my hearing these days with drumming.
Yeah.
There's drums under there.
Formula
drumming, and then bagpipes, motorsport, and motorbikes.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
Brilliant. Ruaraidh, Ruaraidh, I think that's a fantastic place to leave it. I mean, I always like to just end with, there's always a chance for people to plug whatever they got to plug, whether it's books or stuff they've been up to, or where they can find you on social media, LinkedIn, or where can people find what you're doing?
Yeah, if you can spell my name right, you'll find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, pretty much. I don't have anything else. I don't have any books or anything. But yeah,
Brilliant.
no, you'll find me on LinkedIn, and go enjoy your racing. And remember, it's not just about going around in circles. We do something useful with it too, and you get to enjoy it as you go. So yeah, listen to your teachers, kids.
There you go. Well, listen, I'll put your name and how to spell it, of course, in the show notes and stuff, so people will find it there, and it'd be easy to Google you. So fantastic, Ruaraidh.
Fantastic. Very good story,
Thank you
Chris.
so much for taking the time. Lovely speaking with you.
My pleasure.
And that is a wrap on this week's episode. A huge thank you again to Ruaraidh for sharing his incredible stories with us. And a big thanks to you all for listening and watching as well. If you'd like to learn more about Ruaraidh's work or connect with him online, you'll find all the links in the show notes, or head over to our website, noordinarymonday.com. And as always, you can find extra clips and visuals from this episode across our socials. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and of course, the No Ordinary Monday community group on Facebook, where you can jump into the conversation, ask questions, and share your thoughts about the show. All right, so on to this week's listener story segment. If you'd like to send in your listener story, head to the website and click on the listener story page, or you can email us hello, HELLO, at noordinarymonday.com with listener story in the subject line. Okay, so full disclosure, this week's story is technically a listener story. I found it online. It was shared by an astrophysicist who once worked a winter season at the Ice Cube Neutrino Observatory in Antarctica, one of the most remote jobs on the planet. Okay, so this is her story. About halfway through the winter, when the sun hadn't risen in weeks and the temperature was hovering around minus 60 degrees Celsius, that's minus 76 Fahrenheit, the small crew and I faced a genuine crisis. We ran out of coffee. Apparently, the logistics team had miscalculated just how much coffee the winter crew would need to drink. As it turns out, scientists isolated in total darkness for months on end need a lot of coffee. So one morning, I walked into the galley to find a handwritten sign on the coffee machine. It read, "We regret to inform you, there is no more coffee." Morale across the base plummeted instantly. Within hours, the team and I had organised what we called a scientific emergency response mission. We tore through every storage container in the station looking for anything with caffeine in it. Then we hit an unexpected jackpot, a forgotten box of Nespresso pods. But the base had no Nespresso machine. So we improvised. We cracked open the pods and poured the grounds into a sock, a clean sock, mind you, and used it as a makeshift filter over a saucepan. The result? Tasted like burnt mud, but when you're in total darkness at the bottom of the world, it was pure gold. To this day, whenever I smell bad coffee, I am instantly transported back to the South Pole, standing over a saucepan, holding a sock, keeping a science alive, one cup of coffee at a time. I absolutely love this story. I mean, I'm not a coffee drinker, but I know so many people in the TV world and on shoots and stuff Coffee is an absolutely essential part of the job, and honestly, I understand some people can't get through the day without it. But being in a place like the South Pole, there's literally no shops you can go to. You must be in dire straits. But trust scientists to come up with a solution to pinch like that. Amazing. All right, so next week we shift from high performance engineering to frontline humanitarian work. I am joined by Tenby Powell, the founder of Kiwi Care, an organization doing extraordinary and life-saving work in the Ukraine. Tenby takes us inside the realities of evacuating civilians and pets and delivering medical supplies and working in war-torn and frontline communities where every decision carries weight. It is a raw, powerful, and deeply inspiring story. So hit follow or subscribe now if you haven't already, so you don't miss out on next week's episode. If you enjoyed this week's story and feel like doing something that will make you feel good, just take a moment and leave a 5-star rating and review for us, or tell a friend or family member. You actually have no idea how much it helps us grow the show and find new listeners and book more extraordinary guests for you guys. So it just takes 2 minutes and it would help us immensely. This show is independently produced, hosted, and edited by me, Chris Barron. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great Monday, everyone, and we will see you next week.